This piece is almost done now. I've got all the birch trees blocked in, so all of the elements are there in the painting. Now comes what is for me my favorite part of the painting process, which is looking at every single thing and fine-tuning all of these elements as best I can to bring the painting to its full potential. So if you want to kind of get a peek inside my mind in terms of what am I thinking at this stage, in terms of what do I see that this painting needs to bring it to its full potential, stick around because we're going to get to that. So I just got back from the long weekend. We were up at the cottage for a couple days, a couple days without painting, which was kind of nice, and doing some cottage jobs. And now it's time to finish this piece. And it's actually, I actually like this. It's nice sometimes to get away from a piece for a couple days, because then when you come in to see it, you really see it with fresh eyes. Because one thing that often happens when we're painting is we think about what we're going for, what we're hoping the painting to be and to look like. And when it doesn't go along with in terms of what we're going for, we think that's wrong or it's a mistake. But often what happens is what the painting is actually doing might actually be as good or better than what we're going for. But it sometimes takes a little bit of distance from you and the painting to kind of see it and appreciate what it is. Now, in this case, that's not happening. This is actually what I was going for. And it's just, but it's not there yet. So when I'm thinking in terms of what do I need to do to bring this to its full potential? Well, first of all, the sun is not fully resolved, even though the sun is looking fairly bright. And I'll switch now to a close-up of the sun as it is now. But as we move away from the actual sun itself into the foliage, there's a bit of that gradation and glow going on, but it's only taking place in this short period. That's got to happen much more away from the sun for it to really be effective. Plus, we have all of these dark greens that are in here that are representative of, some sort of evergreen branches, whether they be cedar or pine or what have you. Those are not showing any influence of the sun, and they, just like the trees, will receive a dramatic warming effect on the side that's towards the sun, and that will happen all throughout the painting, but the degree to which that happens will be really, really much higher, closer to the sun. And then I look at the birch trees themselves and the sky strokes and the foliage strokes. These strokes kind of come up close to the birch trees, but because I finalized the foliage and the sky before I finalized the birch trees, there's some places where that gap is actually fairly big and it's too much. So I need to come in here and tighten up and put some of these strokes in, either of these colors of the foliage or colors of the sky, so that we don't have this huge, thick, apparent outline of the birch trees. I also want to come in, and even though these yellows that I did initially seem very bright and very intense, they're actually not. And I know that by coming in and putting a few dots of bright, intense yellows and orange and yellowy greens, that will just really, really brighten this piece up. And then last but not least, I think I even might want to just lighten the sky strokes in here. As I mentioned before, when you just put a stroke of color over top of a fairly dark underpainting, that resultant color is not going to be as light as the actual mixture of paint, because that dark from underneath is going to come through. So I think I need to lighten that sky a little bit, at least up to here. And then the last thing that I'll do is I just look for the way the eye moves through the painting, and look for opportunities to just, if I see that, maybe up here, for example, in this quarter, there's no reds, like we have bright reds here, 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 and here. So it needs a little bit of red up there just to unify the painting. And how much does it need? Well, it needs enough. And that's something that you do when you go to do that. It's kind of one stroke at a time to judge that. So I'm actually going to go and do those things to this painting. So I'm going to resolve the sun, resolve the areas around the birches, put the greens on the foliage, and then I'll come back. And then I think I will do in real time those little dots of color to unify the painting, because that's one of those things. I think it's hard to explain it unless you actually see it happening. So I'm going to get to work here, and I'll come back when there's just those little touches to do. Okay, so I've been kind of puttering away on this for about probably 45 minutes or so, and I'll shoot some close-ups here so that you can see what I'm talking. But I've really lightened up the area around the sun, brightened up all those yellows. You can see all of these areas here that were very dark, and the greens, I've added lighter tones of greens in there, especially where it falls directly under the sun. I've also done the same sort of thing moving out here. All of these greens that were very dark, they now have kind of a more bluish tone on the side facing away from the sun, and then the lighter green towards the sun. Now I've also gone in and I've lightened up a lot of the yellows, a lot of the greens, and then I did lighten the sky up in this area here too. And so that's one thing that I find when I'm actually painting and talking, it takes a certain amount of my concentration away. And then when I come back and look with fresh eyes, it's like, oh, that should have been lighter, more intense, whatever. So again, I guess that's part of the other thing is when you're painting, it really takes 100% of your focus to get it right. Even just that little bit of me kind of trying to articulate what I'm thinking, I find that does make the painting suffer just a little bit. But anyways, I'm going to try and do that again. So now I'm going to show you what I'll do to finish this. And really all I need now, I talk about unifying the painting. And here we've got these kind of reds and these purple tones. The magentas and the purples that appear in the birch trees, but they don't really appear anywhere else. Now the blues kind of appear through the sky and throughout the whole painting, but those purples and those magentas don't really appear anywhere else. And by me just looking for opportunities where there's darks that are kind of just nondescript darks, by me putting dots of color of purples and those magentas in there, it will just make all of the colors that are going on in here look like it relates to the rest of it. And so I'm going to maybe just move the camera a little bit, and I will put those dots of colors in and you'll see what I mean. Now I'm gonna go first with the kind of more bluish purple. And so just anywhere where I see darks, where it's just kind of needs something to break it up a little bit, that's where I'm going to put a little stroke of these purples. And it's like, what are these strokes of? They're nothing. They're just strokes of color. Now what they actually, you will actually see this in the forest, and this could be the cool light reflecting off the side of background trees, or it could just be the cool shadow areas. And usually when you have kind of warm light, all of your shadows are going to be cooler. If you have cool light, all of your shadows are going to be warmer. So I'm just looking for opportunities to put these strokes of purple in here. And again, I can tell you exactly how much it needs. And I'm sure some of you are already thinking this. It needs enough. And I can't tell you whether enough is 100 strokes or 10 strokes or 50 strokes. And the way you come to enough is kind of one stroke at a time. Whether it's 55 or 57 strokes of purple, if that is kind of what the optimum is, it's not going to make a difference one or two more or less. But 10 or 15 more or less could actually have a big impact. So when you put these strokes of color on, I mean, I'm doing it a little faster because I know it needs a certain amount. As I get towards the end, that's when I'll really slow down. But when you get towards where you're thinking, okay, this is going to be pretty close to enough, or I think it might need some purple, don't go in and put 30 strokes of purple in and then assess it. Go and put one stroke of purple and see how that looks. And then, if you're not sure, tentatively put another stroke of purple in. or red or whatever it is. And if you don't like it, you can wipe those couple strokes off very easily. But if you go in and put 30 strokes of color on and then try and assess whether the first one was a good move or not, that's when you can get into kind of basically ruining a painting. So at this stage, again, one brush stroke at a time, just looking for areas where there's a dark, where I can come in and just change it from almost a black to more of a purple. And that's going to make these purples in the trees look like they relate a little more to the rest of the painting. Okay, so that's probably enough for the purples. And then I'm also going to come in and do the same sort of thing with these purpley magentas. And these actually are up here in my photo there. Again, it's sun reflecting off branches or trees in the background. And partly for me too, I just know from experience that I really like the way that purples, greens, and magentas go together. And so that sometimes is something that also affects your decisions. If you just know there's certain color combinations that you really like. And so I actually save opportunities to put these in. There's areas where whether it's either the brown, reddish brown of the canvas showing through, or whether it's just like a flat black or very dark with no color in it. And I know I can come into those areas later towards the very last stage of the painting and put these strokes of magenta, and it's a color combination that I find very pleasing. Again, especially when there's a lot of greens, it really just breaks up that monotony of the greens, and especially putting this into the areas where the greens are dark. Okay, I actually think that this piece is finished. And I know those last little things were all I had. The only thing I have to do is sign it. And I always look, with signing a painting is also adding to the composition. So when you put your signature in, your signature is the same as doing a little calligraphic stroke of branches or something else, or grass. So I look to leave an area that's a little quiet, and that's this area right here. So I'm going to put my signature in there, and then we will call this piece finished. So let's just now, I'm going to go and show you a few befores and a few afters of this last little bit. So you'll see that first of all, the sun's been brightened up quite a bit. Then if we just kind of look at the greens overall, those have been lightened up all over the painting. The sky has been lightened not only in the sun, but in that central area where it kind of opens up. And then you can see all of these little dots of purples and bluish purples throughout the painting, and see how that echoes those colors that appear in the birches. So that's it for this piece and for today. I hope you've enjoyed watching me take this piece from pretty much beginning all the way through to finish. And yeah, thank you for your time. If you like this, give me a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, please subscribe. As always, I appreciate you spending your time to watch this. Please help spread the word, and I will see you next time. I'm Tim Packer.